Welcome to the second episode of the Triathlete Hour. I'm Kelly O'Mara, your host and the editor-in-chief of Triathlete. Today, we've got Flora Duffy joining us from South Africa, where she's in lockdown and not allowed to leave the house. The Xterra and ITU World champ talked to us about what it's like to be an Olympic favorite and now not have an Olympics to go to. We talked about coming back from injuries and how it took her a decade to become an overnight sensation. Plus, she's got her eye on 70.3 Worlds this November, and she shares some things she learned from her first 70.3. But first, I chatted with our very own Brad Culp about the triathlon landscape, how pros are making a living through all this, and we got into some speculation about what could happen with Kona. Before we dive into it though, one quick note. In this age of social distancing, we're still figuring out recording remotely and all the quirks of these first few episodes. Bear with us through a couple of hiccups and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss anything coming in the next few weeks. Now, let's get to it. All right, so welcome, Brad. I refer to you as our very own Brad Culp, but I guess by that I mean we pay you small amounts of money to write stuff for us. But the reason I want to talk to you was in the past, you've worked all kinds of places. You worked for Lava, you worked for the ITU, you've done all the things in triathlon, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately. And now you're in Chicago and you just had a kid, which I guess would be crazy right now in the current post-corona world. It's a little nuts.
Yeah, it's she's a week old today. So we've been home with her for 4 days now. So it's starting to become more routine and calming down a bit, and she's sleeping a bit. But honestly, like we'd be kind of quarantined anyway right now.
Right.
I wouldn't be leaving the house much, aside to sneak in a little run here or there. So aside from the grandparents not being able to help out, like they both just moved closer to us just like a few months ago so that they could, be by the baby. And now like they can see her through the window and, we can talk to them, out the garage, but that's about it. So that's a little weird. But yeah, it's definitely, it's been a good distraction though. Like we went 5 or 6 days without turning on the news and hearing our president's voice, which is kind of refreshing. So it's not all bad.
Yeah, I have been watching too much news. That would be my pro tip for everyone. Turn off the news, turn off the internet. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's like every morning on Twitter, you see people being like, I'm going to boycott, the Trump briefing. And then those same people in the afternoon are just going crazy on Twitter about everything he's saying. So
that's probably true of everything on Twitter, actually.
Yeah. I've been spending way too much time on Twitter because I've been just sitting, looking at a baby, changing diapers, and I need to get off Twitter for sure.
And in everything going crazy, obviously in the post Corona world, everything's gone nuts in the sports world, in triathlon too, which is of course what we want to talk about, because we usually hire you to cover pro racing, and now there is no pro racing. Like there is no racing. Pretty much everything's been canceled through April, May. Some things are canceled in June. Some things aren't yet. They announced the Olympics obviously last week. The Olympics are not canceled, but postponed. They'll be happening starting July 23rd, 2021, even though they're still going to call them the 2020 Olympics, whatever. Sure. So I guess I wanted to talk a little bit because you used to work for the ITU. And so I want to talk a little bit about the logistics of the Olympics. I mean, we know that the athletes are adjusting their schedules, kind of trying to come to terms with this, but what goes on behind the scenes to change? Like they have to change all of the calendars now. They have to change their whole schedule for this year, for next year. I've been trying to wrap my head around like everything that has to happen now.
Yeah, obviously qualification is the big thing that's going to be impacted. That's still mostly a federation issue. Like each federation really controls their own qualifying. Like the ITU decides how those 110 Olympic spots go out, but then it's up to each federation to decide how they want to divvy them up. I imagine they'll try to get like Yokohama this year was supposed to be sort of an Olympic trials kind of race for a lot of countries, and that it was the last one of the qualification window. So a lot of federations were using that as kind of either for their discretionary spots or automatic qualifier. Ideally, there'll be another race. Maybe it's not in Japan, but maybe there's a race early next year that kind of fills that void, and people use that as kind of a second Olympic trials. If not, if we are literally, if this screws up anything going into the 2021 ITU schedule, which hopefully it won't, then I think you're going to see just a lot more countries doing what Australia does or what Great Britain does, and doing basically everything by discretion. Or I guess just Australia does that now.
Oh, I thought Great Britain still did the we're going to give them to whoever we want.
They might, yeah. I can't really keep track. They might, but I feel like they also had an automatic means.
They did have one automatic, yeah.
That they screwed up with the whole holding hands thing, and yeah, the test event was a bit of a mess last year. But
well, so with qualification, I guess the big question, or a big question, is kind of the people who have already qualified. Will they keep their spots? And right now, most places, most countries, most governing bodies are saying, if they already qualified, they're staying that way. And I certainly, Summer Rappaport's the only American who's already qualified. And I certainly think, she should keep her spot. We shouldn't make her re-earn it. We shouldn't take it away from her. But I know that's kind of a question that keeps coming up.
Yeah. I saw, I think it was Des Linden tweeted about it, because someone had proposed that they rerun the U.S. marathon trials, which is absurd. And so obviously some people have brought it up, and I get that, qualifying almost a year and a half now ahead of the games is not ideal. And an athlete could be a totally different athlete. And ultimately what federations want is your best chance of getting a medal. That's how their funding is based off of. That's what everything's about, getting medals. So, maybe a year from now, Summer doesn't represent our best chance to get a medal. And maybe there's someone who looks, is in amazing form, because that happens so much in ITU, where one season someone just gets crazy hot.
Right.
I remember the year I worked for ITU, Paula Finley was unstoppable. She was winning every single race, and we're like, oh my God, she's totally going to win it. She has to win a gold in London. And then 2 years later, she was maybe she had a lot of injuries, and she was probably the 10th or 15th best athlete in the world. So you see those crazy swings, especially in ITU racing. And we might see that there might be a U.S. athlete who's kind of off the radar right now, who gets really hot and should be on the team. But like you said, Summer qualified. She's got her slot. No matter what happens, she's definitely a lock and should be. And the relay throws a kind of weird wrench. That was already changing the qualification so much, and how countries are trying to maximize their chances of getting a medal there. Especially for the U.S., because you have to figure, outside of Katie winning an individual medal, our best chance to win a medal is in that relay. So, I know the U.S. wants to be really careful about making sure that however they pick those 5 or 6 athletes, there are 4 of them who could be a really great relay.
Yeah, that's what Sarah Chu and I were talking last week, and she is apparently on the selection committee, which I didn't realize. So she was giving me insight into they really want a medal, and it's a much different thing you pick for when it's a 15-minute race versus a 20-minute race.
Right.
That's a different skill set.
Yeah, and that's why I look at Ben Canute on the men's side, probably not the most deserving in terms of he's racing so much other stuff, and he really is a 70.3 specialist right now. At this point,
it's hard to count him out, but obviously.
Yeah, but for a relay, just in terms of the sheer power he can put out on a short and fast bike and run like that, he's probably our best relay athlete. Especially if we get dropped and you need someone on that final leg to close a huge gap on the bike. He's one of the only athletes in the world who can do that. So from a relay standpoint, I'm like, man, we really need Ben on the team. But then you look at the individuals that would be left out if he was picked. And
this is what's difficult about an Olympic team, right? There's always a heartbreak. There's always somebody who's happy. There's always somebody who's heartbroken. That's how it works.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that Sarah's I knew there was one athlete rep on the selection committee out of the 5 people. I'm glad to hear it's Sarah, because she's got a good head on her shoulders, and I think will help steer that committee in the right direction.
Yeah, that's what she told me last week. She was giving us some insight on this podcast last week. So the other, besides the Olympics, though, in long course racing, I don't even know what those athletes are going to do. Almost all their races are gone. And a lot of them, they make their money through sponsors. They make their money through prize money. Without races, they don't have, a governing body necessarily funding them. And so a lot of them, I don't even think they're making any money right now. Once you get outside of the top 10, once you get outside of Daniela, Lucy, Jan. It's going to be tough for a lot of those guys. And it doesn't look like they're going to have races really until July.
Yeah,
at
that's
best.
kind of best. Yeah, I was just talking with Andrew Starkowitz this morning, and he's one of those athletes who's in that boat of he makes his money by racing a lot and winning a lot of races, and the money he's got coming from sponsors is more incentive based. It's not like he's getting a base salary or anything. So I mean, that's so much of his income is just dried up. And yeah, he was saying the same thing. He's like, my best case scenario is we start racing in July or August, and then, we just have to race a ton to make up that, you might have to race 3 or 4 times a month if you can, to just, make what you can and get what you can out of the season.
I do wonder how that's going to end up looking with all of the races now rescheduled for September, October, November, and everybody going to be trying to target those races. They're going to be intense. Like there's going to be a lot of people at these few races in this very small window. It's going to be, I don't even know how it's going to pan out yet, basically.
Yeah, it should make for some great pro races. I mean, say Ironman St. George actually goes off in, I think it's September, they rescheduled it for, and say that's one of the races with a ton of qualifying spots. You might just see a field that's almost as competitive as Kona, even better than, Frankfurt or Roth usually is. So yeah, it would make for a very interesting season, a very weird season. And but like you said, that's kind of best case scenario at this point is July, August, September, we start seeing a lot of races springing up.
Yeah, so there's certainly a possibility. And I mean, you mentioned this in your column you write for us this week, and a couple people have mentioned it to me, and it's kind of starting to be talked about. There's certainly a possibility that Kona gets affected, like that we do start to see races, that far out be rescheduled or postponed or canceled. I don't think we can make that call at this point. I don't think they are planning on that happening right now. To be clear, to be very clear, Kona is still on for October 10th or whatever as is. But if this continues to get worse and worse and worse, particularly in light of more and more qualifying events are getting canceled, pushed, and pushed outside the qualification window for 2020, it's raising a lot of questions that I don't think Ironman even has answers to yet. Like a lot of people are emailing me, asking me these questions, and I don't think Ironman knows what to do yet.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah, pretty much every conversation I've had with industry people in the last week has been, is Kona going to happen? And I'm like, I don't know. Ironman has no idea. We're all in the same boat here, which
right.
I guess is good. There's no one to blame if Kona's canceled. It's not like, oh, Ironman canceled Kona. Like it's not their fault. No one's been through this before. No one knows where it's going. And yeah, as I wrote this week, my bigger concern with the cancellation would be the state of Hawaii is just like we're not going to bring in people from all over the world onto one little island that's right now pretty much unaffected. They got 12 cases that they know of on the Big Island, and I think they would like to keep that number very small because over in Oahu it's starting to spread and get a lot worse.
Right.
So obviously Kona is a huge part of Kona's economy, that race, as is the cruise industry. I mean, that's really the biggest part of their economy. And obviously they're not going to be opening up to cruises anytime soon. So we'll see how they I think they're going to be the ones letting Ironman know, like, yes, this is a possibility. Vacation happen and you guys figure out that component. But it's really up to Hawaii to tell Ironman where they're going.
Yeah. And if it does happen, which, I certainly hope it does. And I hope we're in a place in the world at that point that, this isn't a concern anymore. But if it does, there are still all these questions about qualification. Because I was just looking at, someone had crunched the numbers, what number of slots should have been allocated over this month, next month, and now won't fall in the 2020 qualification window. And so how will that be allocated? And it would be pure speculation. I don't know, right? Like I don't have any answer, but Ironman I think probably has a number of choices here. They could add spots to other races. They could do some kind of discretionary thing. They could open up the legacy or the foundation or charity spots. They could do lots of things. And I would love, I think I told you this, one idea that I had was they could raise more money, sell off some of those extra spots and donate it to COVID research, right? Mm-hmm. That would be an option. I don't think that's going to happen, but that would be an option.
No, but it's definitely a big opportunity for for the Ironman Foundation to really do something big here. If they're kind of throwing their hands up, how are we going to give out 2,000 age group spots? Yeah, make a whole bunch of them. Spots to benefit the foundation, or benefit COVID research, or fighting COVID in Hawaii maybe.
Right.
But I would be surprised to see that. Obviously, Ironman is losing a ton of money this year. They're being hit harder than probably any race producer in the world because they put on more big events than just about anyone else. They've got a bottom line to worry about. They've got new owners who, don't want to lose a ton of money on this. I think they're going to try to find a way to still, make some money back at the end of the year.
Somehow they sold to new owners in the middle of all this, and kudos to them, because I don't know how that happened. So
yeah, I thought I was hallucinating. I was like 12 hours after my daughter was born. I hadn't slept. I'm looking at my phone. I'm like, what? The guy's going Discovery Channel about Ironman, right? Like it was, odd timing. Maybe they got it at a discount because everything was down. $700 million is still a lot of money.
Yes.
I guess it's good to get Ironman out of the hands of the Chinese and into the hands of a media company. Like, obviously working in media, that sounds good. But I don't know, from an operational standpoint, I don't think anything changes. It'll still be the same people running the ship at Ironman, I would imagine, for the most part. So I really don't know that.
No, I think I think on the ground, because I spent a lot of the last week trying to figure out how this would affect, the regular age group athletes. And I don't think it's really going to a ton, at least in the immediate. Obviously you could speculate long term, but there's no reason to think anything will change. I think they'll still put on good events. I think they still will have all of their regular operations people running everything. It's just a question of, what are the other potential opportunities moving forward, media wise, or getting into new areas, which they did also announce they are launching a virtual racing series. And I mean, not shocking given that all racing is being canceled. It's just a little shocking given how quickly they turned out their new virtual racing series. I mean, they pretty quickly announced, after kind of all of these cancellations took place, that, ta-da, we have a new virtual club platform. We're going to have virtual races. It's all going to be happening super fast. And my understanding is it's their own proprietary service. Like, it's not like they're like, oh, we're going to host a Zwift ride. Like, that's not what's happening. They're launching their own app, essentially.
Yeah, they've obviously been investing a lot on the technology side, in the last year or so with, the racing app and the coaching app as well, that I know. I'm sure this will be very tied into that. I would imagine that they want people doing the virtual racing and also using their virtual training app. They partnered with some company to build that. I can't remember the name. Because I don't do virtual stuff.
Right. I was like, let's all speculate, because I don't do virtual stuff either.
Yeah. Like I don't wear a watch when I run. Like I try to be as unvirtual as possible with swim, bike, and run. Not saying anything against it. Like I think it's great that people have an opportunity to race, and I think it's awesome that people can sit in their garage or in their basement and ride a bike for 2 hours. I think that sounds insane. I used to do it when I first started doing triathlons, like back in college. I remember doing like 5 and 6 hour rides inside. I would never ever do that again. I don't know what was wrong with me. But if you can put up with that, that's your thing. More power to you. It's amazing that some pro athletes are so, get so much out of the virtual training. You look at how Lucy Charles trains, how Lionel Sanders trains, how Andy Potts has always trained. He was kind of the first to go kind of all indoors. It's really effective training. Like you can do things inside that you certainly can't do outside, safely. yeah, it doesn't work for me. But if people want to get on there and have a virtual Ironman race, I guess without the swim.
Right. That's
Um,
what I think. A lot of people have a lot of questions about how this is going to work once it launches, because it launches this week, and then their first races are this weekend, and they will have like two pros going head to head this weekend in a virtual race, and then they will also open it up to age group athletes. And there are a lot of questions, like, what do you do with the swim? Is this like a GPS thing, which I think it's a GPS based thing,
yeah,
or is it a smart trainer thing? You know, how does
it's
this
got to
all
be easy to cheat. Like
well,
I
that's
don't.
also a question, is how are they going
Right.
to crack down on cheating? They said they're figuring it out. It's going to be somewhat like heart rate, GPS based to double check if you're cheating.
Okay.
Because they want to hand out 70.3 world spots. So they're going to have to crack down on cheating. They can't just take your word.
Yeah, that seems to be the craziest part, is that they're handing out spots to the world championship. And I mean, I think that goes to show what a weird time we're living in. Is like, we're gonna have this strange virtual race, and that's gonna decide, who's racing in one of the marquee events in the world. Um, yeah, it's
There's
bizarre.
also a lot. I mean, honestly, I think the virtual space is a little crowded right now. There's just so many. Um, Zwift was even crashing last week because there were so many people on it. You know, everyone kind of launched their own personal ride/run they're hosting, that I'm curious, if this is going to take off, like if there is still a space for a need for more virtual racing. We'll see.
Hmm. Yeah, and I guess it depends on how long, people. If in a few weeks we hear that, all right, races in August and September, it looks like they're actually going to happen. Maybe people relax a bit and just start looking at this as like a really long off season, and start gearing up, for real races in the middle of summer. But if this goes on any longer, I think, maybe not people like you and me. It seems like we're both very anti-virtual, but
I
maybe
just don't
some
like, I
people.
just don't want to like spend more time with people, Brad. Don't need to talk to more people.
No. The nice part about swim, bike, and run is that it's a great way to isolate. I really don't do much group training. Aside from occasional master swim, still love a master swim, but yeah, this really hasn't changed much as far as my training goes. I have noticed that a lot more people are out on the running trails, which is
Yeah.
cool. It's where I live. I'm 50 miles from Chicago. It's pretty remote, and it's not like it's crowded and you have to worry about distancing. So for me, it's been great to see, and I almost feel like there might be a running boom, a year from now, a year and a half from now, because I see neighbors that I know have never run before, and now they're out for a jog and out for a bike ride. I think, it could ultimately be a good thing, but
That is what I'm hearing, is that there is a running boom coming, because it's kind of the thing you can do right now. So all these people who used to go to the gym or used to go to spin classes, you're allowed in a lot of places, even here where we're at a shelter in home order, you're allowed to go for a run, for some short exercise. And it is like the one way kind of, then you get outside, you get some sun. So here it is a little crowded. They are having to close the parks and the trails because it got a little overrun. So that's unfortunate, but we'll see.
Have they closed the beaches up by you?
They closed all the beaches in LA. I'm up in NorCal, and nobody was swimming at the beaches anyway. So, because it's 48 degrees in the water,
Yeah,
so it wasn't a problem. Yeah. So we'll see how this all pans out. But yeah, it will be interesting to see if there continues to be a running boom after this. And if everybody comes over to triathlon, that would be nice. We all convince them to come over to triathlon after this is over.
Yeah, and I feel like if there's a huge running boom, like it ultimately trickles down to, that's kind of how triathlon took off too. It was like we were right behind the running boom. Is this kind of this next step, like do a half marathon, and maybe come do a sprint triathlon. So yes, everyone is welcome. I will tell all my neighbors who I've all of a sudden seen out running that they should get a bike, and I'll give them a free swim lesson, and start to recruit a bunch more triathletes.
There you go. Everybody go out and recruit one person for after this is over. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I was going to ask you. I usually would ask people what their plans are for the rest of the year, what their predictions are, but I feel like right now, no one knows. So
yeah,
it'd be pointless to ask.
Yeah, I'm very, very cautiously optimistic that we'll have a Kona and a 70.3 Worlds and all that at the end of the year. But yeah, I think that it's a very real possibility that it doesn't happen, and I think it's it's good for people to kind of come to terms with that. And I think it was good that Roth canceled early instead of doing what the Tour de France is doing, is being like, yeah, we're still planning on having a Tour de France, which seems crazy at this point.
Seems crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So who knows? But the good part is, biking and running, at least, it's still in business for most of us. And it's kind of a nice time to get out and remind yourself why you enjoy those things. It's not all about racing and competing. Sometimes it's just, biking, running, and swimming whenever the pools and beaches open. They're fun things to do, and they're good for you. So
they're good for you. See, there you go. Ultimately, we'll all get healthier. Well,
yeah.
Hopefully. Let's hope.
Hopefully. Yeah, some of us.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to take a short break. And then after the break, Flora Duffy will be joining us to talk about how she's coping with full-on lockdown and the Olympics being canceled and where she goes from there.
All right. Thanks, Kelly.
Hi, guys. I just wanted to cut in here to say thank you for listening to our first ever podcast, the Triathlete Hour. And be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, so that you won't miss any of the things we have planned or coming. All interviews, news, everything you want to know about triathlon. Now, let's get back to it. All right, so we have Flora with us today. Thank you, Flora, for joining us from South Africa, where you guys are on lockdown. Like, what day are you on? You're not allowed to leave your house. Is that right?
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. Yes, I am on a 21-day lockdown. This is day 4, and it's Monday. And so far, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this, but my day is not that different.
I actually had the same thing happen. Yeah, we went on shelter at home, and I was like, oh, this doesn't change anything for me.
Yeah, I know. It's like, welcome to my life, everybody. This is... the one big thing is obviously I can't leave my house to go train. But I'm quite nicely set up. I have an indoor bike room with my Zwift and my Wahoo kicker. And I just had to buy a treadmill in 24 hours because I realized I wasn't going to be able to leave my house to go run. So I was a complete panic. Then I have nice little gym equipment. And the one thing that really helped me was that 4 weeks ago, I broke my hand.
That helped you?
Well, it helped me because it's a very embarrassing way how I broke my hand, but we can get to that later. But it helped prepare me because it cut away the swimming. So I was already used to not swimming, and I was already riding indoors because I wasn't allowed to ride outdoors. So it was a nice intro into what true lockdown would be like. So for me,
you're fine. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys literally aren't allowed to go outside, right? Is that you have to stay inside completely?
Yeah. Well, we can go outside into our yard, but yeah, you're not supposed to go walk around the neighborhood unless you're going to the grocery store, which we conveniently have a grocery store 600 meters from our house. So, I walk there if I need something, and that's a nice little okay, I'm in the outside world. So you can do that. But you shouldn't be out exercising. You shouldn't be out walking your dog. Leaving your house for really bare essentials like groceries or medical reasons or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, because we here in the U.S., we haven't gone that strict yet. You're allowed to exercise outside still, but there's a lot of debate over what does that entail. Maybe you shouldn't be doing 2-a-days outside. Maybe you could chill out a little. But obviously, like you said, you already injured your hand. You had a lot going on. How have you been dealing with all of this then? Now you can't even go outside. I feel like I would just give up. I would just be like, screw it.
Give up. Yeah, I'm done. Well, it was a pretty hard week because the same day, literally the same day we got announced we're going into 21-day lockdown was the same day I found out that the Olympics was postponed. So it was just I was like, oh my God, everything my whole life has been building for, my professional life,
right, is
just not going to happen this year. And then you find out, okay, now you can't leave your house for 21 days. So, in my, my tiny little triathlon world, that was just I don't know, crazy for me to deal with. But in the reality, of course, it all makes sense with the coronavirus and what's going on in the world and, and all of that. But yeah, it's just been a lot to deal with. And you're like, well, what do I even do now? Do I need to be stressing that I'm not swimming? Because am I even going to race this year?
I know.
Nobody else is swimming. Nobody else is training properly. So in one hand, that's kind of comforting. You're like, I'm not the only one over here. But at the same time, you're like, why am I doing this training day in and day out if I'm not going to race? But I guess literally it gives me something to do. Like it passes the time. So that's my motivator right now. It passes the time.
There are like 2 people who have those fancy master spas, and I think they're going to beat everyone once we're finally racing
I'm
again.
So jealous of them. Yeah. That's like, every triathlete is like, those people. I can't believe it. Yeah. But hey, great time to have one.
Yeah. So you obviously, I mean, your whole plan this year, all the Olympians plans were like aiming for 4 months from now, Tokyo. How do you kind of adjust your season? Obviously, it's hard to adjust your season right now because you don't even know what's going to happen. But assuming we get racing again by August, how do you kind of adjust your training, your plan? I saw on the Instagram, you said you had very different plans for 2021. And I had been like really hoping that a bunch of you were going to come out to 70.3 Worlds because I know you got your spot, like Ashley Gentle got her spot. And I thought it was going to be so exciting. All these Olympians show up after the Olympics in November, move up to 70.3. But now I'm wondering, are you guys still going to do that? Is that still a thing? What were your plans and what are they now? Yeah.
I know. Everything has shifted a year. Okay. So, of course, I was expecting to race the Olympics this year. That was the big goal. And then I was hoping to have like a bit more of a relaxed 2021. Of course, the WTS Grand Final is in Bermuda. So that is a huge target for 2021. And so I'd still race the WTS series. But I was quite keen to sort of dip my toe in to the 70.3 distance a little bit more, do a few more races. So kind of combine the two, which I think is kind of a fun. I mean, I really enjoy racing and I enjoy racing different formats. So doing sort of both is actually like fun for me. So yeah, it's like a cool new challenge.
Right.
But of course, next year, maybe I can do 170.3. But yeah, it's going to be a very different year. Everything is going to be then focused on the Olympics, which they just announced will start July 23rd, 2021. So
right. So that kind of moves the whole schedule then, like both ways.
Yeah, it does. So, which, I mean, I don't know, to some people that might seem, it's just a year, but it's like, it's a lot building up for an Olympics, like particularly when you're a medal favorite, like you have that looming over you for another year. Like, like when I go home to Bermuda, or even just generally around, like in the triathlon circles, it's like, it's pretty much weekly, daily that someone brings up about, the Olympics. You try to win a medal. This, that. I'm like, yes, I am. Can we not talk about it all the time? Yes. It's like, it's just healthy pressure, Flora. I'm like, yes, thank you.
You are, I mean, like, I would imagine Bermuda's interesting because you were a big enough celebrity before you won the WTS race in Bermuda. Now I have to imagine, like, everywhere you go, people are stopping you, right?
Yeah, that race, I mean, because, you were there, was that...
like 2 years ago. And
January 2018. So before the first one of the WTSs there, right?
Yeah, yes. That's when I came.
Yeah.
And I thought you were still like a pretty big celebrity then. But now I have to imagine it's like kind of crazy.
Now it's exploded. Well, that and then Commonwealth Games that year as well. So that was in March 2018. And then 6 weeks later was WTS Bermuda. So the combination of those two is just like explosion. But it's incredible. It's so cool that the community all came out to support the race and that they can get so excited about triathlon and sport, just bringing the community together is such a wonderful thing.
I feel like we should tell, for people who don't know, Flora grew up in Bermuda, which is a tiny island. Yeah. Like, we rode all the way to the end of the island on our bikes when I was there 2 years ago, and I think it took 2 hours round trip. Like, it's a tiny island, and she's a very big celebrity there, which is like kind of hilarious because I don't think triathletes are big celebrities other places, but in Bermuda. what is it? I mean, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what it's like growing up in Bermuda. For both it being tiny, you guys are also really good at triathlon. Like Tyler Butterfield's also from there. The mixed team relay got third at the Commonwealth Games. I mean, you only have like 4 elite triathletes, and you got third in the mixed relay. So
wait, we weren't quite third. We were fifth, but that's still very, very good. I'm pretty sure we were fifth. Yeah, but no, you're right. Like, we literally have 4 triathletes that race at, I guess, like pro level.
Right.
Tyler doesn't even do ITU anymore. So we are grateful that Tyler Butterfield came back down from Ironman distance to race at the Commonwealth Games. And it just gave us this incredible opportunity to have Bermuda, tiny Bermuda, 65,000 people, compete at the mixed team relay at the Commonwealth Games, which, like, for a lot of people, like, to realize how much went into having 4 of us to race at that level, like, it's amazing. And yeah, somehow triathlon is a fairly big sport in Bermuda. It's very well supported in terms of, like, the community is very involved. The Bermuda Triathlon Association have a lot of really great members that just help promote the sport. We have lots of great events throughout the year. So it has its own little following there, and it's just managed to produce, Tyler Butterfield, myself, Erica Holy, and Tyler Smith. And it's so weird, especially like when in Boulder, when both Tyler and I turn up to the pool, Butterfield, and you're like, how are there 2 of us from Bermuda here swimming in Boulder? Like, it just always makes me smile. But yeah, Bermuda is a beautiful little island. It was incredible to grow up there. I mean, just hanging on the beach all day, riding my bike around on the railway trail. And just, I mean, it's an incredible little place. And I'm so grateful that that's where I'm from, and that's where I get to call home, and that I don't get to spend too much time there anymore because of my racing and traveling. But every time I get to go back, and when I got to introduce my husband to the island, like, that was such a special privilege, and to see the island through his eyes and see, like, the love he's cultivating for the place. It's just so cool. So special.
Because you guys now, so your husband's Dan Hugo, who is from South Africa. So you guys now spend like half your time in South Africa, half in Boulder, and then you like go back to Bermuda sometimes, and you're flying around the world for races. It's pretty much like you and like, he goes with you pretty much everywhere, right? And that's kind of how that works, or?
Yes, it does. So I'm very lucky that he can now join me and, like, pretty much fully supports me. He does have his own. He doesn't just.
He doesn't just support you.
Bad to just support me, but that's not Dan. Dan would know. He needs a lot more. He's like the most busiest man I know. But no, he has a nut butter business in South Africa called Butternut, and so he and his business partner Antoine, they run that full time. Luckily, Dan has the flexibility to do his role from anywhere in the world, so he can spend sort of 6 months in Boulder, 6 months in Stellenbosch. When he's here in Stellenbosch, I don't see him that much because he goes into work every day. But then in Boulder and during the race season, he's with me, 24/7 supporting me, which is a huge, huge help. That hasn't always been the case. It's only, I would say, the second half of 2017 and 2018, he was full-time going to races with me. So there's a lot of races in 2016 I would just rock up to solo, which is kind of funny when I think back to it. I'm like, how did I do that? Because now, like, the thought of going to a race alone, I'm like, no way. But yeah, it's such a big help having him there to support me and literally, like, do everything. So I just have to turn up and swim, bike, run. It's easy.
It's easy. It's not hard. It's fun. I feel like a lot of people, and I'm not going to like characterize our listeners. Maybe they all have been following your career since you were like 16, but a lot of people I feel like think Flora Duffy, like, oh, she just like popped onto the scene a few years ago and it was like really good. People kind of don't realize you've been doing it since you were a kid. You were like a super good as junior. I don't remember if you won Junior Worlds or whatever, but you were then you went to the Olympics like at like 16, 17, kind of totally crashed out of the sport, quit for a long time, and then like came back around slowly, like had to deal with. So it's like this very long story that like it's kind of taking you a long time to get here, which I think actually a lot of our like listeners and readers would really appreciate, because a lot of them have like ups and downs. It's not actually easy, right? It's not just like one day you woke up and we're like, oh, I'm going to be a world champion. It took like a really long time. So yeah, I'm hoping maybe you can just like tell us a little bit about like that wasn't a question. That was just like FYI, guys. Like it took a long time. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about what that's like just to like, why did you come back after you quit? How did you even like keep at it for so long?
Yeah, so I was second at Junior Worlds at 18, and at the same time as racing junior, I raced in it was only World Cups at the time, but that was the equivalent of WTS. So I was 18 racing in like the big leagues and had a few really good results and sort of burst onto the scene. But for me as an 18-year-old, that was just, I don't know, too much for me to deal with. I went up to the Olympics, but just had all sorts of struggles. And I just really needed to step back from the sport for various reasons. And so I did. And I went to the University of Colorado, and I forgot about triathlon. I joined a sorority, which was fun, but it wasn't quite me. So that was kind of like my epiphany moment of like, oh my gosh, Flora, you need to get back into triathlon. Like that's you. This is not you. Stop. You tried, but
you tried to be a sorority girl, but no.
Yeah, no, didn't work. So at that time I was like around 21, 22. And then sort of from there, I just slowly got back into training. I joined the CU cycling team, did a lot of cycling races, which I just really enjoyed. And that sort of got my competitive spirit back, and then eventually bit the bullet and did my first World Cup. It was, June 2010, and it was the High V World Cup. And at that time, that was like the big money World Cup.
Right,
so
right.
All the stars were there. And I was just like, oh my gosh, why'd you choose this one as your first one back? But the race went pretty well. And I think I was top 20, which I was pumped about. Like I was like 20th, as I say, top 20. But like I was thrilled with that. And then just from there, just started like working my way back. But that was 22. And, oh man, there were so many ups and downs along the way. Qualified for London, but like literally I'd be like, I freakishly finished 5th in one WTS. And then like 2 weeks later at the next WTS, I'd be like 45th. And it was just like all over the place. And then eventually things kind of just started clicking a bit more into place. If you ask my parents, they'll say that's because I met Dan. And then
I was like, I feel like I asked my parents and they were like, Dan.
Yeah.
Dan is the answer.
Dan is the reason Flora got good at triathlon again. Yeah. But I did. He introduced me to Xterra. I was doing a little bit before that. But really, I mean, he was the top of his game when I met him in Xterra. So I got to learn all from him. And it was just like really fun that we could do it together. And then I just had a bit of success there. I won my first world title in 2014. Xterra.
In Xterra, yeah.
I think I was 26 or 27. And just kind of from there, that I got a lot more of my confidence back. I'd been training pretty solidly for a few years. And that just sort of springboarded me back into racing. I've then, just racing back more into the ITU stuff, and just came in with just a new attitude of why am I doing this, and also realized I'm doing this full time, so I need to make it work. Like this is my job now, so like I can't just like sit, swim well, sit around in this pack, and then hope I run okay. Like no, I need to be assertive, and I need to make these races, try and shape this race so that it suits my strengths. So that I can have success. And so that's not easy to do. And it took me quite a few years to sort of cultivate those skills. But that's just kind of like the mindset that I had. And yeah, it took a lot of work, but I somehow got there. There's a lot of tears along the way, but I managed to sort of get myself back there.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of went like, I don't remember exactly, but you went undefeated for a while in 2018, won the world championship. And I think we all were like, oh man, like last year was going to be your year. And then you got injured again. Right. And I feel like it's like little injuries, right? It's been, I can't even keep track, but I like,
Yeah.
and that can be like kind of
Yeah.
demoralizing, right? You get like one injury, you solve
Yeah.
it, you get another, you're like,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, I was super injured. So like kind of this is the timeline. 2016 was like somehow freaky out of nowhere. Flora like comes onto the scene and is like world number one leading into the Olympics. Won my first WTS, which was just like crazy. And then managed to win the world title that year. And then beginning of 2017, I had an injury in my hip. So I missed the first two WTS races and then managed to come back from that successfully. Had a good season. Then I won that 2017 world title overall. And then 2018 started off great. And then the big injury happened. I had a stress reaction in my navicular and I tore my post-tib tendon right at the insertion into the navicular, which is like, don't do that. That is like the ultimate.
that's the
Don't
one that
mess
takes
with
like
that
forever
area.
to heal, right? Because there's no blood to the
Yeah.
area. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't break my navicular, which is super, super bad.
Right.
But mine, I felt like it was like the equivalent of the process to get back.
Right.
But yeah, so that happened at the beginning of 2018. That was May 2018. I did one more race in 2018, which was a terrible idea, but didn't really return to racing until August 2019.
That's like
So
a
I
long
basically
time.
missed
Yeah.
most of the 2018 season and most of the 2019 season. And now I'm going to miss most of the 2020 season. Oh no, my gosh, Flora. But this one's not my fault.
Right.
I'm ready.
You're ready. Whatever they call racing again, you're ready.
Yeah, minus my hand.
Right. Because then you have these freak injuries where I feel like on Instagram I see like you got attacked by a dog and then you got your hand stuck in a lane line and broke your finger. Like what?
Yeah, so that also happened. That happened 4 weeks ago. My hand caught the lane line. So I don't know if you've ever been swimming and you've clipped the lane line.
Yeah.
You've been like, "Ooh, that hurt." Maybe get a little bit of like a cut or a bruise. Well, as my hand was entering the water, my pinky got caught in between the lane rope and it got pulled backwards and sideways. And I actually fractured my fifth metacarpal. And it was a spiral fracture, like quite a bad one. Like I saw the x-ray and I was like, oh my gosh. And so then I had to have surgery. So I have a little plate in there. And the surgery happened 4 weeks ago.
So you're like, oh man, so you haven't swum in a while. No biggie.
Yeah, no big deal. Yeah. Yeah, I really haven't swum in a while. So try not to think about that one.
So obviously, I mean, who knows what plans are? It's like impossible. I feel like so weird when I've been talking to athletes because usually you'd be like, what are your plans for this year? And now you're like, I don't know. No one knows what the plans are. But you did do a 70.3 at the end of last year. And I think in the future, you're kind of thinking about doing some of that. Did you like it? How is it different? What did you think about it compared to, I mean, it's way smaller. There was what, like 7 girls or something, I'm assuming, in your field? Yeah.
Yeah, it was real small.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, that was the beginning of this year, beginning of 2020. So I did 70.3 South Africa, which was the end of January.
Right.
Yeah, so I did enjoy it. It was very, very different. I mean, I've raced obviously some Xterra, but primarily just ITU, where you line up and there's 60 girls and off you go. And it's very, very intense. So this was, a lot more relaxed. There was, I think, 7 girls in the field.
Right.
And I was one of the stronger swimmers. So I kind of just got away and swam at my own pace, which I didn't really know. I was like, how hard should I swim? Because I've got a long day ahead of me. And like, I'm used to swimming like flat box, like,
right.
Like I need to stay on these feet, be as far up as I can. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that because I don't think that's necessary. That's not going to bode well for the other 4 hours that I'm going to race. So yeah, that was pretty smooth. And then my coach and he came up with some very exact power zones that I need to stay in. which I was like, cool, this is great. This is a long way. And a great nutrition plan, which also helped keep me on track and just keep me a bit focused because it's a long way, 90 Ks to ride. And I was primarily on my own. So
yeah, I know. I like how you're like, guess what, guys? 70.3 is long.
It's long. But one thing that really sticks out, because in ITU, the swim exit through transition and the first 5 to 10 minutes of the bike, or the first lap of the bike, is like extreme. Like you are
right,
like trying to make the pack, trying to get off the front, you've had a bad swim. Like, no, you're hustling. Whereas this, I got on my bike and I ramped up to speed and I was like, oh, I'm in my power zones. Okay. This is what I'm supposed to be riding. Okay, cool. I'll just keep doing this. Like, if there wasn't this extreme stress or like, I don't know. It was just so strange for me to just be able to go at my own pace.
Right.
And obviously it'll be very different when you go to like a world championships and there's more women around you. But then obviously then you hold that for 90 Ks and you're like, well, this is a long way and a long grind. But yeah, I think enjoyed the experience. It didn't all go to plan. I had some issues on the bike. I didn't spend much time on the TT bike before the race, I have to admit. So
90K was long, is what you're saying.
It was long. My left glute like completely locked up and I struggled to push power on the way back. And I managed to lose 9 minutes and 45 Ks on a mostly downhill section with a mad tailwind. So it really went wrong for me. Like, because I was leading the first like 45 Ks, I had the moto guys, they were all behind me. The lead car was behind me. So then when I started like majorly having issues and blowing up, they were like, oh my gosh, like what is going on with Flora? Like she's literally not pedaling her bike anymore. So they would like ride up to me and be like, Flora, are you okay? Do you need medical? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. And then like 5 minutes later, they're like, are you sure you don't need medical? Are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm fine. Just having some issues, but I'll be okay. So anyway, that really threw me for a loop, but I just kind of kept remembering this is a long race. So like anything can happen. Just get off the bike, reassess, keep taking your gels in at my prescribed intervals that I was meant to be taking them in. And then, I got off onto the run and I felt pretty good. And just kind of ran as best I could because I really wanted to qualify for 70.3 Worlds at the end of the year. And I came off the bike in third and there's only one spot. So I was like, okay, Flora, you've just got to get your butt into gear here. And then, I really enjoyed the run. It was nice. The crowd was great. The course was it's really challenging, but I enjoyed it. And it was cool that I've never liked to run amongst the age groupers like that. I had a few friends that were racing the age group race. So kind of to see them on the course, they shouted at me. So it was a really unique experience. And that part of it I really enjoyed because you don't get that in ITU at all.
Right, that's what I was wondering. Really cool if you what it was like for you to actually have age groupers around you for a change. Like you've never really done that, right? So
no, so that was cool.
Did you feel Sarah True and I were talking last week about how there's a lot? I mean, in the U.S., when she moved up to Ironman distances, she had like way more fans in the U.S. because like the U.S. just doesn't really follow ITU as much. Mm-hmm. Have you found that? I mean, obviously you haven't done more than 170.3, but I'm wondering if you found that to be true, if it's different since you kind of are international, not just US based, if you have like ITU fans and like, you know what I'm saying? Do you see, did you get more
I totally know what you mean. I don't know. I think it does make a difference if you are a US based athlete because when I'm in Boulder, I never get asked about ITU. I always get asked, "Oh, do you do Ironman? Do you do Kona?" And I'm like, "No."
They're like, "I did
I do this other one." Yes, yeah, that's cool. No, so I definitely did notice there was a fair amount of exposure for the race. Obviously not during the race because there's no live coverage, no one can watch, and the tweets are terrible. So you just know, like my parents following her, just like, "Well, Flora's doing a race. We'll just wait 4.5 hours and see what happens." Like, there's a few tweets, but no one really knows. So yeah, I would say pretty even for me at the moment. But I do imagine if I went to a 70.3 Worlds, then I think it would be a lot more exposure and really big for my profile, but probably big for my profile combined with my ITU background and platform coming into it.
I mean, probably.
Definitely.
Because like last year, even when like a couple of the Norwegian guys did really well at 70.3 Worlds, and everyone who only really follows Ironman racing was like, who are these guys? And you're like, well.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they're pretty good. Yeah, that's true. Yep.
So are you, again, with the who knows what the plans are in the future, but are you planning then on after the Olympics, kind of after, Bermuda next year, moving up into 70.3 or longer, or just kind of continuing with WTS, or have you not really decided yet? Or are you just going to do Xterra like all the time?
Well, so I said, I think in 2018 that I had a 5-year plan of my racing, but that has, which involved racing through the Olympics in 2020, doing both ITU and 70.3 in 2021, and then perhaps moving up and maybe trying Ironman. But after my 70.3 experience, I don't think there's I do not see an Ironman in my future. That is just so long. I don't know what I would do. But that has all really shifted because I missed racing most of 2018, most of 2019, and looks like most of 2020. Right. So, everything's a little bit up in the air at the moment. But I definitely, this year, as long as we are able to get back racing this year, I will definitely do 70.3 Worlds. That's 100%. And that is at the end of November. So that's like one, I can be slightly optimistic about doing.
Right.
But yeah, if the WTS series gets back up and running, I'll be fully into that. That's my primary goal. And then, my future 2022, we'll really have to see. I think a lot will hinge on how the Olympics goes. Whether I do continue to race short course or whether I decide I want to fully switch to long course. So it'll be interesting to see where I'm at. I also know I'm one of the older women racing the ITU.
You're like what, like 33?
I'm 32, but I'm like the oldest one in the races. It's shocking. They put your year of birth on the start list, and I'm always like, oh my gosh, do you need to do that? But no. We'll definitely see. I think I definitely see less Xterra in my future, and more 70.3 in that long course sort of bracket. Because it really excites me. I think women's 70.3 at the moment is really exciting. Like last year in Nice, I was just like dying to be in that race. Like it just looked cool on the bike. There was finally like that different like dynamic, and there were so many strong women riding together that you were like, "Ooh, what is going to happen here?" And then going up that climb, and it was just really exciting, which was like a new thing to see. That sort of dynamic in the women's long course racing.
It's gotten a lot more competitive at that top level. Obviously, not like every single random race, but at the. And then I was also pretty excited about, like, I thought a lot of you short course athletes were probably going to do Worlds in November, so I did think that was also going to be really interesting this year to see all of that together. So
yeah, totally, cool. I agree. And who from the long course side, sort of like your Daniela and Lucy's, who after like a Kona would go to do 70.3, because that they also like they majorly impact the race and shape it.
Oh yeah.
I'd hope so. I'd love to race with them. Like, oh man, this is so cool.
Oh, it'd be interesting. Now we're all like, everybody's gonna have to place their bets. It's gonna be very dramatic.
Gosh.
Oh, cool. Other than obviously everything, I feel like every time we record something or write something, I have to say, like, FYI, today it's March 30th. Everything might change by the time this airs, like 2 days later, because everything's changing like hour by hour right now. It's so tough to know. So that being said, you're staying in South Africa for now, and then like what are your plans the rest of the year from here?
Okay, so my plans, as it stands today. So I was meant to fly April 1st, which I mentioned earlier. So that's not happening. So I'm hoping that flights are up and running in May, and I would like to fly back to Boulder and base there for the rest of the year. And just really see what happens with the racing. Hopefully some of it kicks off at some point, and I'll definitely be there. I mean, I need to race. I haven't raced in so long, or not yet. I mean, I raced a bit last year, but
I was like, you did the Tokyo Test event, right? That was in like August?
I did.
Yeah.
That was August. So I raced from August to October last year. So I did a few races, but I'm also very aware that I have sponsors and all sorts to try and keep happy. So yeah, hopefully there's some racing. I'll do some ITU stuff. And then, I mean, if there's nothing, if there's hopefully 70.3 Worlds, I mean, prepare fully for that. That would be a really big goal. And that how the year was supposed to work out was meant to have like 3 months pretty much.
Right.
From when the WTS season wrapped up until 70.3 Worlds to prepare for that. But no, we'll just have to see. It's all so up in the air. And yeah, just taking it day by day and hoping for the best, really.
You're not doing any of the Super League stuff, right?
No, I won't be doing any of the Super League events. I'm not part of that series.
I can't keep track of who's doing what. So.
Yeah. No, most people do it. Most of them are doing it, but I've never done one.
And okay, so last week with Sarah True, to finish out, we played Would You Rather, a weird Would You Rather. So here's my Would You Rather for this week, okay? Given the current situation in the world, would you rather only be able to do your running on a treadmill for the rest of your life, but you can like bike outside and stuff, or only able to ride on trainer indoors for the rest of your life, but you can like run outside? Would you rather trainer or treadmill for the rest of your life?
Trainer. Easy.
Trainer. Really?
Oh, I hate the treadmill.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible.
It's pretty terrible. Unless you ever, I don't have a super good one. So it's just like, I count like the seconds. So yeah, that I think I would choose that. Okay. Although maybe with my injury history, I should really switch that around, but nah. Yeah.
Like you can't get chased by dogs indoors, so.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, that happened on Christmas Day.
I feel like someday we'll have a whole episode of just Flora's bizarre injuries.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and on this weird little Zoom call thing. Thanks for talking and chatting.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Thanks to Brad and Flora for joining us today. And thanks to our editor, Kirk, for making us sound good, even as we're on our computers all over the world. And thanks to the Triathlete team for, working hard through all this craziness. And I'd like to thank you guys for listening and subscribing wherever you get your podcast and for staying involved in your triathlon community. Keep training and stay tuned for what else we have to bring you.